All right, so today we are looking at the lesson plan for the Grapes of Wrath task. And the essential question is, what is the relationship between multiplying and dividing fractions? And the standards, the Common Core standards that we are looking at are 7 NS number systems, specifically to multiplying and dividing rational numbers. So for my activating strategy, I played for my students from the YouTube video the duck song.
Tell me the duck story. Bum, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum. A duck walked up to a lemonade stand and he said to the man, run in the stand, hey, bum, 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 got any grapes?
So I played the entirety of the duck song for my students as they were entering the classroom, and that was my activating strategy that I used. Some options that you have here are also, I've got some links here, hyperlinks on how you can cut grapes to prevent choking hazards, or there's also some articles with some statistics about children that get choked on grapes, whole grapes, and suffer some injuries from that. The key vocabulary is included here, and there's some technology integration that could be used also. For my initial activity, I had cut, using the die cut system that we have here at my school, I'd had some ovals cut out to look like grapes. And so I had the students, each got one as they entered the classroom. I had them fold their oval in half. And then I had them cut it. And then we discussed how could we get from this whole shape to these two pieces, and what operations could we use to go from 1 to 2. So we talked about 1 plus 1 is 2, and some other options. They said, well, we divided it in half. So 1 divided by 1/2 is 2. Or we could say 1 times 2 is 2. And they came up with some other options. And then I had them fold each of those pieces in half again. And then we had discussion about how did we get from 1 piece to 4 pieces, or how did we go from 2 pieces to 4 pieces, and the discussion there, and what operations could we have performed to get there mathematically. And so at that point they were realizing that addition was not the relationship that we were looking at, that from 1 to 4 you can multiply by 4, or from 2 to 4 you could divide by 1/2, or from here you could divide by 1/4. So we discussed the different options to go from 1 to 4 or from 2 to 4. If you wanted to continue with this, I will tell you this, that you should use circles. If you use the ovals, it doesn't exactly match up as far as making it into half pieces. So I will say that. There's some summarizing strategies here, some extensions, and some summative assessments that you might like to use. But here's what I gave to the students themselves. And the introduction is, I have 3 children, and for the first one, for every first-time parent, they're all about keeping their child safe and having the best for their child. And so we talked about that. And then for the third child, they have to take care of themselves more than the first child did. So the student is babysitting for me, and they are feeding my children lunch, peanut butter jelly sandwich, there's the peanut butter jelly sandwich, and grapes. So for my differentiation, I let the high group roll a dice, a 30-sided dice, and whatever number they came up with, that was the number of grapes they were going to give to each child. For my lower achieving students, I rolled the dice and we worked through the task together. The higher group, the higher achieving students, were able to work in pairs on this task together. So they start off with 3 plates, one for each child, and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and this particular one had 8 grapes. So then the questions that follow are how many grapes are in each plate? How many grapes are there altogether? So if you have 8 here, they could show 8 plus 8 plus 8. They could say 8 times 3 to get to 24 total grapes. On the next page, because you are a conscientious babysitter and you do not want my children choking, you cut them in half. So we have our peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and we have our grapes that we have cut into halves. So now we have 16 grapes on each plate, grape pieces. And then we have to show how many we got total. So you could say 16 plus 16 plus 16 is 48. You could say 16 times 3 is 48. You could say 8 divided by 1/2 and then times 3. So what some of the students ended up doing here would be that. And then some of them figured out that we could also do this. Now if they're not getting there yet, I was not leading them there yet. Part C asks, the youngest child is 14 months. You're going to be more comfortable as a babysitter if you cut those grapes in half again. And you go ahead and do it for all of them because the baby doesn't want to be feeling like a baby. So we cut them in half again. So we start with 16 from here, grape pieces, to here. When we cut those 16 pieces into halves again, we have 32 grape pieces on each plate. So again, 32 plus 32 plus 32 is 96, or 32 times 3 is 96 total. And these are all the one expressions that, this is from my low achieving group, that they came up with to come from here to 96. So they had 16 pieces to start with. They cut them in half, divided it into half. You have 3 plates. Here, this starts all the way from the beginning. 8 cut into half, cut into half again, times the 3 plates. And this is a variation of that. Here, 8 divided by 1/4, because from the beginning, where we had 8 grapes on the plate, and then we cut it in half for here, and cut in half again. That's cut into 4th pieces, 1/4 sizes. So 8 divided by 1/4, then times 3 for the 3 plates. And then here's where they started to realize, oh, well, I can get to 32 by multiplying 8 times 4. And then I've got 3 plates, and that will get me to 96. Here, they've got the 2 times that they've cut it into 2 pieces. Here is from, it's already into 16 pieces, cut into 2 pieces again. And here's the 32 pieces on part C times 3 for the 96 total. Now here is the meat of this task. Why in the world does it seem like there are more grapes when you're dividing them in half? Shouldn't there be less? Explain what is happening in this situation. And here's my emphasis: see it, say it, support it. Whenever we do a task in my classroom, If my students notice something, whether it's a pattern or anything like that, if I tell them, if you see something, then you need to say that you see it. And once you say it, then support whatever it is that you've said with math. And these quotes that I've given here, I wrote them down for my students, is from the low achieving class. If you take the pieces and put them back together, there would still be 8 grapes. Another student said, there are more pieces, but the pieces are smaller. So it's still the same amount. This was from a young man who's typically very quiet in class. And he had this to say, when you divide them, it looks like there's more, when there is really the same amount, but you're just changing the shape. And I was particularly excited to get this kind of thought, this level of thought from that class. So here I had them extend it. What if you had 4 children instead of 3 children? You were babysitting 4. And the next question was spectacularly fun. What if you, instead of cutting the grapes into halves, cut it into 2/3? And I wanted them to see that sort of situation where we were dividing by 2 or a different number numerator than 1. So that's why I chose 2/3. So I used visually, if we cut this into 2/3, and I use colored pencils to show them, if I cut each one of these into 2/3, here's a 1/3, or one set of 2/3. There's another one. So I was showing them how the sets of 2/3 are made up. And then we counted all the different sets. So on this one plate, we have 12 sets of 2/3. So then we have that on 3 plates or 4 plates, however you want to use that there. So if it's just for 3, then it would be for 36. We have 36 sets of 2/3 pieces. And then they came up with this. And this was really important to see that if you divide by this, it's the same as multiplying by this. And then we had a discussion. What if we divided the grapes evenly between the plates and then cut the plate into 2/3 and not the grapes? So if we had 8 grapes, here's 1, 2, 3, dividing them into the thirds, 4, 5, 6, and then we have 7 and 8, the 7th and 8th grape left. So we actually had to cut those into pieces, and they came into 2/3 pieces. So if we had them on each plate, we have got 2 grapes and 2/3 to make a total of 8 grapes altogether. The conclusion from this was, again, it doesn't change the amount of grapes or the amount of grapes. It's just changing the shape. So they concluded it is the same amount, but we're just changing the shape. And that is all I have for today. Thanks for listening.